I woke up one morning and my truck was covered with more bees than usual, so I ran outside in my pajamas to see what was going on. A swarm of bees that I caught the night before was leaving their hive and swarming again. I tried to offer their new hive back to them, but they weren't moving in very quickly, which told me that they wanted to go somewhere else. It was a race between me and the bees. I had to find the queen before the bees found a place to fly off to. After a few minutes, I found her. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, but before I could put her in the new hive, I had bees swarming to her in my hand. As soon as I put the queen in the hive, the bees began to go right in. I still had some bees on my hand who weren't leaving because they could still smell their queen on me. So I shook them off so they could find her. Within minutes, the entire colony was rushing to get back into their new hive. You can see how fast they were moving and how the queen was covered in bees. I waited for all the bees to get into their hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees in my pajamas. This suitcase was full of bees, so I opened it up and I found a beautiful old hive. This hive didn't have any food or brood, but it did have a lot of bees who were very gentle unless you were a threat to the colony like this wasp. I watched as the bees defended their colony and eliminated the wasp. Then I picked up the suitcase full of bees, I loaded it into my truck, and I took the bees home with me. Then it was time to move the bees out of the suitcase and into the new hive. So I gave the bees some smoke, and they all started to leave the suitcase and march into the new hive because they knew it was a better place for them to live. So I waited and watched to see if I could find the queen bee in the crowd, and when most of the bees were out of the suitcase, all of a sudden I saw the queen bee walking into the new hive. So I gave the rest of the bees some smoke, and the entire colony moved out of the suitcase and into the new hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees. Bees were living in the wall of this house, and I was called to give the bees a new home. So I opened up the wall, and inside I found a giant hive full of very gentle bees. And to my surprise, almost immediately I found the queen. I was really excited since this hardly ever happens in a hive this big. So I put the queen in a clip to keep her safe, and I put her into the new hive. Then I started to remove each piece of comb. It looked like this queen had been very busy lately because this hive was packed full of baby bees. All of these little white larvae would eventually turn into baby bees, and saving these pieces of comb is one of the most important parts of the bee removal process. So I just kept removing each piece of the hive. And whatever I removed from the original hive, I saved for the bees to have in their new home. These bees had everything they needed to survive, and they had a ton of honey. I had been working for about 2 hours by now, so I helped myself to a bite of honey, and it was delicious. But after I was done removing all of the comb from the wall, I still had to help get the bees into the new hive, so I started scooping them up with my hands. But there were so many bees that I decided to build a little bee bridge, and pretty soon all of the bees started to rush over the bee bridge and into the new hive to be with their queen. So I gave the rest of the bees some smoke, and I waited for them to get into the new hive. Then I closed up the hive, I took the bees home, and it was another great day of saving the bees. This cooler was full of bees, so I started carefully removing each piece of the hive. I saved all of the bees' hard work for them to use in their new home. Then I started scooping up bees while searching for the queen. These bees were very gentle and they were not trying to sting me, so I just kept scooping up bees, and all of a sudden I found the queen on the side of the cooler. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I placed her in the new hive. Then I shook the rest of the bees out of the cooler and into the new hive so they could be with their queen. I finished removing the comb from the cooler, and I put the cover on the new hive. But then I noticed that all of the bees were flying out of the new hive and swarming all around me. It was a race between me and the bees. I had to figure out a way to get them back in the new hive, so I made sure the queen was still in the clip, and I waited to see where the bees were going. They were flying straight towards a tree in the backyard, so I chased after the swarm of bees while carrying the queen. The swarm was just out of my reach, so I used the queen to guide the colony back to the new hive. Then I put the queen into the new hive, and I shook the swarm of bees off the tree. I waited for them to settle back into the new hive with their queen, and it was another great day of saving the bees.